All right, we are live on the YouTube channel. We're live on Spaces. Freed from Booch Ball here. This is not a true Booch Ball episode. This is a Booch Ball hot takes pregame. Florida week 0 week. Got Jazzo here with us, our West Coast correspondent. Jazz,
Hey, babe.
you ready to rock?
Let's go.
All right, so today I'm thinking we might have a hard cutoff in about 7:30 my time. So we got like 55 minutes to work with here before my wife starts getting mad at me. So yeah, I mean, yesterday we talked kind of big picture stuff. We were talking about the Miami schedule, projected win totals. I went with 10-2. You went 9-3. You had some crazy hot takes on who we're going to lose to. Can you remind me what that was?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm feeling pretty good that we're going to lose to Georgia Tech. We're going to lose to Louisville. There may be a loss in there to Duke. And there's a flex loss potentially, whether it's a Louisville or Cal. We're going to lose one of those games for sure. So I've got four soft circled. 3 of them are hard circled.
Love that. Yeah, I'm not ready to pick the games we're gonna lose, but they just got to happen. So we went down that road yesterday, and right towards the end of our stream last night, we started talking about Cam Ward and what he brings to the table a little bit, and the pieces he's going to have around him. So I figured tonight would be our opportunity to kind of go in depth on the offense. You know, we usually do this just on the phone, off air. One of us is driving around town, usually me driving hours and hours to nowhere for work. And I'll just call Jazz and he'll play hooky from work. And we'll just chop it up and run through the whole roster and talk about who we like. And we got to get that on air today. So let's get after it. Cam Ward, did you watch any notable Washington State games that you actually remember, from last season or the year before?
I will admit that I'm a bad Pac-12 fan. I will say I watched Cam Ward play at least a couple times, but do I remember any of Cam Ward's games? No. Do I remember Washington State winning a bunch of games? I do. And I was like, hey, that quarterback's pretty good. So pretty excited that he's here at the U, but don't know if I have specific call-outs I can make for Cam Ward's season last year.
Yeah, I don't explicitly remember any. I know I watched a little bit of Washington State, but I can't pinpoint a time where I just sat at my couch at 9:00 or whatever time they were playing, because they don't exclusively play at night. They also have day games, which are afternoon games, of course. But of course, that's what they're most notable for. But I mean, Washington State, I always thought of them as kind of that gunslinging, we're going to try to outscore you type team. They never really had a defense. They never really had an offensive line. They never really had a running game. They never really had elite talent at wide receiver. It was basically just Cam Ward running a bunch of air raid concepts, running around for his life and throwing the ball far. And that led them to 7-8 wins last year?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Significantly outperforming where they were anticipated to be.
Yeah, so in 2023, they went 5-7, but they started hot.
Yeah. Sorry, hold on. Oh. You're good. Just getting work calls,
Oops. Still on the clock on the West Coast. So, yeah, they actually started the season 4-0 last year and then did not go well for the rest of the season. Their only win in Pac-12 play was Colorado after they beat Oregon State week 4. So Yeah, not great for Washington. They had some hype at the beginning of the year, and then it was a little bit downhill. But I mean, I'm very excited to have Cam Ward at QB for us. I think that he brings a lot of elements that we haven't had over the past few years. He's played a lot of college football. So it's kind of like when we bring in De'Aaron King out of the portal as a guy who's just been around, he has talent. And when it came out that he was coming here, I thought he was going to be more of that De'Aaron King type player, like a smaller, more of a dual threat. But that's not really the case. He's like a decent size. He's not small. He's not, Tyler Van Dyke or one of these huge towering quarterbacks, but I think he's supposed to be 6'2", somewhat legit. So he's a decent size, and he's definitely pass first. It looks like the majority of his runs are out of necessity, kind of running for his life. A little bit of designed runs in the red zone, but he's not like the type that we're going to be scheming up runs for other than short yardage in the red zone, I don't think.
Yeah. And just to your point, Freed, Cam Ward and I are roughly the same size. We're 6'2", both 223. So,
I believe the weight.
So, I can say that he's a solid dude. And yeah, De'Aaron was 5'10", $185, maybe $190.
5'10" would probably be generous, honestly.
5'10" in cleats.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Cam definitely has a better size advantage. It is interesting to see that he chose to come back for, what is it, his senior year? I was assuming it was a redshirt senior year, but
yeah, that's right.
But he definitely showed pro quality talent. Yeah.
I think he would have gotten drafted. It's just what round, right? And with the NIL, he's probably making more money by coming back to Miami this season than he would have been as that 4th or 5th round quarterback.
Oh, for sure.
Without that multi-year mega guaranteed contract. So why not come back, lock yourself into that, $1 million NIL type deal and give yourself an opportunity to go first round? Because I think he does have that opportunity. He's skilled enough, and Miami's a good enough team that he could conceivably put up some big time numbers. Yeah,
100%. So, Freed, how would you say that you feel about our quarterback situation? Is this the best you felt? This is the best you felt about our quarterback since insert blank.
Well, it's always tough because he hasn't actually played for us before. So there's always that little bit of hesitation because you don't really know how it's going to be until he gets here, how he's going to click with the receivers, how he's going to click with the offensive coordinator. Is he going to be on the same page with the offensive line? But assuming all of those things fall into place, I would probably say that it's the best I've felt at quarterback at least since. It's tough because there's a thought to say, honestly, there's a thought to say since the beginning of last season. Like, I felt pretty damn good about Tyler Van Dyke going into last season. And that's scary. But you look beyond that. I mean, we felt very good with De'Aaron King, especially when King went into year 2. I was like, damn, King in year 2 with Rhett Lashley, I was feeling really good. Brad Kaya, year 3, that team was humming on offense by the end of the year. So it's hard to say, but I definitely see a path for him to be better than all of those guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say that exists. I have a short memory. So I've forgotten how good I felt about Tyler Van Dyke when I told you he was going to win a Heisman. So this is the best I have felt about a Miami quarterback since Ja'Cory Harris, since 5-star Ja'Cory.
Yeah, we were feeling pretty hyped on Stephen Morris too. Remember, he was getting first round projections back in like 2012, 2011, 2012. I remember early that year he was getting first round projections, just like Kaya was year 3. So it's almost, I mean, with that's 5 or 6 things we just called out. So it's almost like every other year we talk ourselves into having the guy. But just like we were saying last night, we talk ourselves into it every year. But this year feels different. But it feels different every year. But this year really
feels different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's recency bias, and we have short memories, but Cam Ward has the potential to be really good. I think I said this last night, but I don't think he has to try to be Superman. He doesn't have to play like he was playing at Washington State, where it was basically just Cam Ward running for his life. That's why he fumbled the ball 14 times or whatever it is. It was because he was trying to scramble and make these incredible plays on a routine basis. He's not going to have to do that because I think he's got a lot of skill players around him, and he should have an offense that's going to allow him to, kind of take the best of that air raid scheme, from the sense that he's going to be getting the ball out quickly a lot. But other times they're going to dial up those deep threats, which is going to allow for there to be space for checkdowns coming out of the backfield, all sorts of other stuff, because the safeties are going to have to stay deep. So I think we're in a good situation with Cam Ward. The question is, what happens if injuries happen? Because injuries do happen. So I guess you can take the lead here and tell me how you would feel. A, if he goes down, how does that affect your thoughts on the season outlook? And B, who's the next guy up in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, if Cam Ward goes down, I would say I would feel pretty confident that we're going 6-6. Depending, no matter where he goes down during the season.
No way.
I mean, you saw Emory Williams. That dude.
We won against Clemson, and we almost won against Florida State.
Clemson. That was, I mean, that Clemson team was the most beat down Clemson team I think I've seen since I started watching ACC football. And mind you, I started watching ACC football when Virginia Tech came over to the ACC. So, it was a win, a marquee win, but not a marquee. It's not the same Clemson. It's not your dad's Clemson. This was a weaker, softer Clemson.
Obviously, it's not Alabama level Clemson, but that weaker, softer Clemson is still a mid to upper echelon ACC team. That's essentially who we're going to be playing every week. That same sort of middling ACC team. That's our competition. And let's not forget, that was true freshman Emory Williams, who has now had another year in the system to develop. I'm not saying that Emory is like a world beater. I'm not saying I'm not saying there won't be a drop off. I think there's a clear drop off. And also, I'm not convinced that Emory is even the guy to be the backup, because we brought in Reese Poffenbarger in the transfer portal also.
Shout out SUNY Albany. I'm a big Poffenbarger guy. Poffenbargers definitely are too. If you watched a little bit of FCS football last year, which I know, Freed, you probably have, but our kind audience and listeners may not have watched as much FCS football. Reese Poffenbarger was out here balling for the Danes. I mean, this man was doing things that I couldn't believe. Talk about having some crazy white boy energy. Reese Poffenbarger's got that crazy white boy energy. Call that man Machine Gun Reese.
Yeah, some Johnny Manziel type vibes out of him for sure. So that's a big jump, though, going from FCS to the ACC. But it's interesting because he committed before Cam Ward. So there was about a 7 or 10 day period where we kind of thought Reese Poffenbarger was going to be the starting quarterback next season, right? Maybe Ja'Cory Brown hadn't left yet at that point, maybe. So there was still kind of that discussion of like, is Ja'Cory going to be the guy? Is Emery going to recover from his broken arm and be the guy? Or is Reese like legit going to be the guy? And then Cam Ward came in and kind of shut that door. But it's kind of an interesting comparison with Reese and Emery. And, you know, obviously neither of us are watching practice. We're just going off of what people are saying about it. And a lot of people are starting to lean towards Emery as being the second guy if there actually is an injury to Cam. It sounds like people seem to think Emery would be the long-term backup if needed. But if it's just like a quick injury, he gets knocked out for a series or something like that, probably Reese as the stopgap, because the ideal situation is Emery gets that red shirt this year. But at the same time, I think the red shirt thing's a little overblown at this point. You know, people are transferring so much. If they're good enough, they're going to leave in 3 years. I wouldn't worry about saving a red shirt if somebody is ready to help you win.
Well, right. And a red shirt might be the fast track to the transfer portal.
Potentially. I mean, that's how I went with Ja'Cory. So, yeah, interesting stuff there. But I think, honestly, with either one of them, if we get Reese at 75% of the level he was playing at Albany, or if we get Emery at a similar level to the way he played last year, I feel like the supporting cast and the defense are good enough for Miami to still win 8 or 9 games. I don't see a scenario where it's a 6-win team just because we're on the backup QB.
Yeah, I mean, you've talked me into it. You've talked me into it that we have more depth than I originally thought. I mean, I would say Cam Ward is definitely an upper echelon quarterback this year, and to lose that would be challenging, to say the least, to an offense which I think has the potential to be anemic. Which,
yeah, let's not pretend that it wouldn't be crushing to lose Cam Ward, because we're going all in this year essentially with a 1 year of Cam Ward. If you lose him for a prolonged period, the way it was when we lost to Eric King, it's crushing. But if you recall that COVID year when King got hurt, that was the rise of TVD. And by the end of that season, it pretty much felt like TVD was playing at a higher level than even Derek could have been playing. So things happen, and when players are thrust into that spotlight at QB, especially when they have a supporting cast around them that is as potentially good as Miami's could be, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody else was able to flourish too.
Yep. With that, I think we should probably transition into the skill players.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's going to be one of our biggest question marks this year. Obviously, you and I have different opinions here. I think you're looking at the depth, which is something that we haven't had in probably years at the skill positions, whereas I'm looking at sort of the ceiling, and I don't see any guys here that have high ceilings. I see a lot of pretty solid, pretty mediocre skills. But Free, tell me why you're feeling more bullish.
Yeah, I think that's a tough take, because you got to remember last year, the skill position players had an arm behind their backs. They were, first of all, dealing with a quarterback who was completely unsuccessful. They were dealing with an offensive coordinator in his first year in the system. I think we're in store for a big jump going from year 1 to year 2. In an ideal world, you want to have the quarterback and the offensive coordinator continuously together from year 1 to year 2. So obviously that's not the case, and we've subbed out Tyler Van Dyke for Cam Ward, and clearly I think we're all happy about that. So we're getting year 2 in the system for most of the wide receivers, for most of the running backs, for the offensive line. So I think you can only expect a jump in that regard, and then plug in Cam Ward, and I think that's going to elevate everybody else just on its own. I hear where you're coming from in that we probably don't have a first round pick amongst these skill players, but I think there's honestly another dozen guys, like a legitimate 12 dudes from the offense, from the receiver room, the running back room, and the tight end room. I'd say 12 of these dudes are NFL guys, like almost no doubt. And let's start at running back. And I think running back, you're selling it short because I think Damian Martinez is that guy. If there's anybody on offense who you're going to say, all right, this is that dude, I think Damian Martinez is that dude. So obviously this is another transfer from Oregon State. He's been on my radar since he was a freshman. I remember when he kind of busted out the seams at Oregon State and everyone was impressed with him. And then just the size and the speed. He's NFL ready, and he doesn't have to do it all because we have so many other guys. We can keep him fresh, and I think he's just going to be a problem if he's healthy.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, Freed, we've had transfer running backs. We've gotten excited about transfer running backs.
Who have we gotten excited about?
What's his name from Ole Miss? Didn't we get
Henry Parrish?
Didn't we get pumped up about Parrish?
No. I mean, we knew what he was. When he came in, he was another piece. Parrish was always a piece. He ended up being like the number one guy just because he was consistent and trustworthy and nobody else was. But the room last year was the running back room last year and the year before, I would say, was full of those middle tier guys like you're kind of claiming. I think this year there's a lot more substance behind it. So, I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Are you not thinking that Damian Martinez is like all ACC level? You think that's off the table?
I would say I would say it's not out of the question. Again, it'd be interesting to see how he stacks up. I'm not trying to claim that the ACC is a massive step up from the Pac-12, but let's just say defenses aren't allowed west of the Rockies.
Yeah, that's fair. I think what people are saying from training camp is that he's every bit what they were hoping he would be. So, we'll see when he actually gets out there. But I think he's the clear-cut running back one. Like, he's going to start. He's probably going to get half the carries in that game against Florida. And then there's another 3 guys that'll probably split the rest, assuming it's a close game. Hopefully we're blowing them out and we're having our 4th and 5th strings getting carries by the 4th quarter. But for you, who do you look at as the next guy?
I mean, I'm looking down the roster here just to make sure I didn't forget anybody. I mean, I'm not sure.
Impressed? Not impressed?
I mean, we've seen a lot, and I'm just trying to think: are any of these dudes guys who showed up and impressed us last season? And my answer is like, not really. Obviously, last season was a little bit of a different story. When you're a one-dimensional team, you can't put that against people like Mark Fletcher. But I mean,
I think Mark Fletcher had his moments last year. I'm kind of on the same boat as you, where I'm very much pumping the brakes on Mark Fletcher as a superstar type running back.
Yeah,
I think one thing that I am excited to see is when I've seen pictures of him and clips of him from this spring, he looks a little more cut, size-wise, a little thinner than he did last year. I was really worried he was going to come back from this foot injury a little bit bigger, a little bit more out of shape. And, he's clearly a skilled running back, but last year he was slow. And typically people don't get faster.
Right. Correct. I mean, I'm looking down the roster. I mean, it looks like we've got a lot of youth in the running back room. It looks like we've got our first participant in the in our live stream on Twitch.
Yeah, we're talking about Miami Hurricanes football. For everyone who's involved, hop on in. We appreciate you. Happy to see you here. But Mark Fletcher, I mean, this is not the Ohio State Judkins and Henderson type situation with like a 1-2 punch.
No.
But you have two big, large men at running back, the way we have with Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher.
Yeah.
That's something to be said. Like, we are going to be able to physically impose our will on pretty much everybody this year, at least in the regular season. I don't think there's any team that's going to be able to handle the combination of O-line and running back size that we have. So I'm pumping the brakes on Mark Fletcher as a superstar, but I am excited to see what he can do, especially as that like maybe second or third guy to come in, where he doesn't have to be the superstar, because that's not his game. He's not a home run hitter, but if he can just come in and just like pound it between the tackles, for 10 carries a game, like that's going to be effective. And then let's talk about some other dudes in the running back room who I feel like you're sleeping on.
Okay.
So AJ Allen came in last year. He was a transfer from Nebraska. I'll give it to you that people were excited about him transferring in last year. There was a lot of hype on him as being potentially the best running back coming into the season. I think it's fair to say that he was hurt for large chunks of the year, and he never really put it together. But he did have one or two very impressive runs. You remember that one 30-yard touchdown against maybe Virginia or somebody where he hurdled the dude? That was probably the best running back run of the year that we had last year. Not saying a whole lot. But other than the Brashard Smith cameo at running back where he took it 89 yards and then fumbled into the end zone and we somehow recovered. But so AJ Allen, I mean, if that's our third string running back, like, again, that's good stuff. It's a lot of depth. And then let's talk about the guys who are not even in the top three right now, essentially, but dudes who could theoretically bust onto the scene this year and be superstars. Like, no joke, Chris Johnson, if he finds the right role as that change of pace back, like, he could have 5-6 touchdowns this year on just long touchdown home run hitting runs, because this is the kid who was like an all-American sprinter, track star, fastest dude on the team. He's still kind of learning how to be a running back, and he's small for the position, obviously, but having that speed is something we haven't really had from a dude touching the ball in a long time. Jalen Knighton kind of flashed that, but he couldn't hold on to the football. So, you bring in another person potentially like that, that's a major factor. So that's 4 dudes. And then Jordan Lyle comes in as a true freshman. And he is a dude who one of the recruiting services had him as the best running back in the country. So he comes in, looks the part, looks college ready, isn't going to be the first or the second guy to get the ball. But by the end of the year, he could be featuring as maybe the number 2 dude in this rotation and potentially the next great Miami Hurricanes running back. Who knows? So, yeah, I'm high on the running back room. I think you make a fair point that there's no first-round superstar here, at least not yet. But we have 5 guys who I feel very good about, at least in their current roles.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not down completely on the running back room, but is it where I feel like the strength of our team is? No. I mean, it feels a little bit like Mario's following the Nick Saban playbook for how do you rebuild a strong program. You rebuild it from the inside out, and you have running backs who aren't going to lose yards, right? Like, you have tough downhill runners who, you're going to get 2, 3, 4 yards at a run, and you're going to grind out a lot of victories, in the trenches.
I think you're selling short Damian Martinez in terms of his home run hitting ability. Yeah, he's a big back, and he's, 230, whatever. But like he had multiple 30+ yard touchdown runs last season. I think he's going to be due for some of those at Miami. And then you bring in that change of pace like the Chris Johnson to kind of do the same. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. And that's how it was last year, right? It was the offensive line gets the running back 4 or 5 yards, and that was that. We didn't have a single running back who was ever really making people miss and home run hitting. You know, Henry Parrish would make a move sometimes, and the rare occasion that there was somebody in the backfield, if a O-lineman missed a block, multiple occasions Henry Parrish made somebody miss in the backfield, picked up 5 yards, but it was never second level, make somebody miss,
Right.
make a dash for it. I think we're going to see that this year, especially because the offensive line is going to keep getting better.
Oh yeah.
And let's not forget, people are going to have to account for Cam Ward in the running game, at least, you know, not all the time, but he's going to be a factor. He's going to pull some of these and take some runs himself. And just the fact that he's so dangerous passing should open up even more running room. So I'm excited about the running backs for sure. But that's just one component of the game. I think we're going to be, in an ideal world, a pretty balanced team. Are you in the same boat on wide receiver where you're thinking, you know, we got a bunch of guys, but none of them are the guy?
Right. I mean, who's our wide receiver one? Is it X?
Yeah, I think until proven otherwise, it's X. And, you know, Xavier Restrepo is not going to be a first round pick, right? Like is he even getting picked? Yeah, he's going to get picked because he's going to put up 800 yards again this season. You know, he was an 1,000-yard receiver last year. If he's healthy, he's going to lead the team in interceptions, maybe lead the team in touchdowns, maybe not yards, but he's going to get a ton of catches. He's going to run after the catch. He's going to be in the right place at the right time. I mean, he's not your Devontae Smith or, you know, the Calvin Johnson, obviously, in the number one in that sense, where he's striking fear into the hearts of opponents. But he's just going to do everything to catch the ball and get yards.
He's going to be a less good version of Braxton Berrios.
Yeah, but they're different. I think they're different players. It's easy to look at their kind of general physical profiles as short, light-skinned South Florida boys. And, you know, but Restrepo's a lot, like, he's bigger, like bulkier. Restrepo's heavier, probably a more tough runner, like once he has the ball in his hands, not quite as shifty, but good route runner. But yeah, I mean, he's in that mold. So if we move on from him, I think that's where it starts to kind of get fun when you start projecting some of the players, because kind of like at running back, it's really deep in terms of the amount of dudes who I think potentially could, by the end of the year, be looked at as the number one guy. Like we have the kind of known commodities in Jacoby George, he's an NFL receiver. He's not going to be a first round pick, but he's going to put up numbers this year. He's going to get drafted. He's going to make a team. You could probably say the same thing about the transfer Shannon Brown. Samuel Brown. Who's Shannon Brown? Is that a different person?
Randy Shannon?
Nah. Sam Brown from Houston. I mean, there's talk about him maybe emerging as the number one. He's kind of that more prototypical physical specimen, taller, faster than pretty much anybody else on the team at the position. So he'll be a candidate to kind of break out. Same with Isaiah Horton. He showed flashes. He's probably not fast enough or athletic enough to really be that nasty number one type target, but he'll fill that Colby Young role of kind of stretching the field, being that taller guy on the outside. And then there's a lot of young guys that are kind of going to be fighting for snaps behind them. There's the freshman class from last season who got some action, like the Ray Joseph.
Ray. Uh, but yeah, Ray. Who else got reps last year?
Robbie Washington a little bit. And I guess that's it. Those are the last of the kids from that class. I feel like there was somebody else that came in with them that already transferred. But then you got the freshman class from this year. So JoJo Trader is going to come in pretty much ready to play. And then you got guys behind him like the Nykar and the Chance Robinson, who might not be quite ready yet, but by the end of the year, who knows what's going to happen in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, Freed, looking around the room, do you feel like it's a balanced room?
Yeah, I think we're still missing that number one freak show elite talent. You plug that number one type dude, like if we got Jeremiah Smith last year in the recruiting portal, the recruiting cycle from high school, number one player in the country. If we could have gotten him and plugged him in basically right away to that starting spot so that everyone else can just drop down a peg, then I feel like everything kind of falls into place. It's almost like everybody is playing just one slot of urgency above where they should be, right?
Yeah.
Where Restrepo shouldn't be the number one target.
No.
He should be more of that, like the fail safe, not the first priority.
Right. Right. A safety blanket slot receiver, not your playmaker.
But maybe that's where we'll see him this year, and he can still kind of thrive in that role. But I think everybody else, basically, I agree with you on this one. We have like 4 dudes who are the second receiver.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of my point, is that, you were saying that, Cam doesn't need to be Superman. And I'm thinking, looking around, our weapons, I'm like, Cam may have to be Superman more than we want him to be.
But the thing about it is, I think he's going to elevate those dudes. It's going to be the type of situation where you play a team and they're just hidden passes every time. It's that frustrating feeling as a Miami fan where you're more talented than the team you're playing, but they're just making it happen and there's no way you can stop them. That could be us, but we're playing,
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm kind of on the same page with you, although I do think that having all of that talent, even though it's not insane elite freak show type talent, having all that talent is going to pay off, because you can't pass to your number one guy every single play. That number one guy can't be on the field every single play. But if you have 4 or 5 dudes who are all, fighting to be that number one guy, the whole room is going to get elevated. There's going to be production. There's no kind of a weak spot to where, all right, pick somebody to double cover. Go ahead and take your pick. Cover somebody. The other side of the field's going to be trouble. And let's not forget about the tight ends too, because, last year was a tough situation for the tight ends, right? There was injuries. We had basically Cam McCormick and freshmen were our only options. We had a quarterback who couldn't pass the ball. So it was kind of a worst case scenario for the tight ends, but there should be a much more rosy outlook this year. Elijah Arroyo should be healthy. So I think he has the potential to be one of the better tight ends in the country, at least the conference. He was a dude last year he was a true junior last year. I was thinking at the beginning of the year, if he balled out, he was going to get drafted. Like he's on that level, I feel like. And I think he still has one more year of eligibility after this, but I'd be surprised if he doesn't get drafted this year. I hope he does, because that means he'll have a good year. But he's not the only one. Cam McCormick's still there. He's going to play a role, mostly in the 12 set where we have 2 tight ends out there. Riley Williams played a lot as a freshman last year. He's hopefully only going to be better. He's a mismatch. That's the 6'6" dude at tight end.
Right.
And then the freshman Elijah Lofton's coming in, and
Yeah.
he's supposed to be an absolute weapon. I mean, people think he's going to be playing from day one, maybe even like starting in some sort of a gadget type package if that's how we decide to go out against Florida. Like, people think he's going to be getting a ton of snaps.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, as bearish as I am on our wide receiver group, I would say the tight end group I do have optimism for, and there is a possibility that the tight ends do help relieve some of the pressure on Cam Ward, right? I mean, we're gonna want to be big, we're gonna want to be physical. There's a high probability that we're running a lot of 12 packages, right?
Yep.
I think that whereas we don't have any over the top explosive talent, I think we could run a possession offense that's grinding people down. And I think the tight ends are a key component of that.
Yeah, it'll be pretty cool to see if that's kind of what the go-to is, or if they decide to get vertical. In an ideal world, there's a combination where we can do both, right? We can grind them down until they start to load up the box, and then you just bomb them over top, and you basically play your game and force the defense to adjust. And then when they do adjust and you get them into the favorable matchups, then we adjust to the adjustment and just, whether it's bomb them deep or turn into that 12 set and just start running them to death with the two 240-pound backs and two tight ends and the best offensive line in the conference.
Yeah.
There's different ways to skin the cat, and hopefully the play calling will allow us to thrive in multiple different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think that will be, if I had to predict what the Miami offense looks like this year, I will say, it's probably going to look a lot like ground and pound. And it's going to look a lot like running big packages, big backs, and that fits the sort of culture that Mario's setting.
Yeah, but at the same time, Cam Ward didn't come here to hand the ball off. Like, he came here to play quarterback. So he's going to get his. And I think we might be running to set up the pass in a sense. But there's going to be more to this offense than just the ground and pound. We're going to dominate in the trenches, because I think they had a plan, which they pitched to Cam Ward, and obviously he was on board with. So I don't think they told him, hey, we're going to dominate in the trenches, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to be a ground and pound dominant team. And Cam Ward said, oh, yeah, sick. I'm going to hand the ball off, and we're going to win 10 games, and it's going to be awesome. I don't think that's the plan they pitched him. So I hear you, and I think we are built for that. But I think we have enough talent, both in a pass blocking perspective and skill positions, to like really open things up. So it should be fun.
Well, I think you're right on the fact that that's going to set up the next level, right? Because Cam Ward, they're going to lull him to sleep, hand off, run a little option, right? Make sure that they have to account for Cam. And then they're going to start rolling out the RPO. And that's where it gets exciting, right? When you're like, they've been handing it off all game. They've been grounding and pounding us. But now we have to account for Cam running or Cam throwing. I think that's where we become dangerous. That being said, I'm not looking to our offense to be explosive. This is not going to be one of the great all-time offenses that the University of Miami's ever seen.
I hope it will be. I'm not sold, but I think there's real potential. Cam Ward breaks some records this year. It wouldn't take much. The records are not super high. Like, most of our passing records are from what, like the 70s, the 80s ish.
Didn't Brad Kaya break all those records?
Maybe career, but not single season.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I feel like Gino Torretta has a lot of them still. which is crazy. So we just haven't had a prolific passing offense. But I mean, I'm here for it. We'll have to see what happens. I guess to wrap up our segment on the offense, who would be your leading receiver this season? Whether, you can choose whatever stat that means to you, but who do you think is going to end up being the guy?
Elijah Arroyo.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think we're going to be a tight end heavy offense. I think you will be surprised.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope that he's not our leading receiver. That would mean, maybe he just has an absurd season, but I feel like we have so many tight ends that are going to kind of rotate in. He's going to have to average. I think somebody's going to go over 1,000 yards this year. So to say Elijah Arroyo is going to average over 100 yards per game is aggressive, but if that ends up happening, I mean, great. But I'm going to go with X until proven otherwise. I think no matter who the QB is, like, he's just going to be the guy until somebody shows up and is just like, hey, I'm a first round receiver. Watch out. And maybe there's that guy on this team and we just don't know yet.
Freed, I think it's time to talk about the thing we're all excited about.
Kickers.
Close. I mean, by far our best player on the field. But no, I'm talking about the big hogs.
Oh, dude, I almost forgot about them. Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah. So how are you feeling? I mean, Mario's an ex-offensive lineman.
Yeah.
He won a natty at Miami, playing on that line. What is going through the mind of Eric Tyrannosaurus Rex, Tyler Friedman, about our offensive line? Is it the real deal, or is it like Florida State's offensive line?
I think it's the real deal. It was the real deal last year, and we lost some big-time pieces. There's no doubt. But I think as a whole, the offensive line is going to be on par with last year, which essentially puts it at an elite level, top 2 or 3 in the conference, maybe best in the conference. Those are stats that are kind of hard to prove, to say you have the best offensive line and this or that. I don't know how anyone can say that definitively, but let's just look at what we're bringing back. So both tackles come back, right? That's massive. Jalen Rivers coming back. Going into last year, people weren't really sold on him as a tackle because he kind of kicked outside from guard. And I think we found that he's just a really good offensive lineman, no matter where he's going to be. I feel like at times last year, at least early in the season, he was also the backup center. I remember, there was talk about if needed, he would kick into center. So we're beyond solid at the tackles. Francis, going to be a true sophomore. Can expect he's going to grow. He was great as a freshman. A few penalties, a couple mental mistakes, but he's only going to get better. So then you go inside, and as Cooper's coming back at right guard, he was one of the best offensive linemen in the conference last year, arguably the best on our team. Coming back for his junior season, true junior, and he'll probably get drafted after this year. Potentially a first-round pick. I think he's like that good. So the other 2 spots are where things get a little interesting.
Yeah.
So we lost Matt Lee to the draft, lost my cousin, Javion Cohen, to the draft. And Javion didn't get drafted, which was weird because he was really good at Alabama and he was really good here. And it seemed like there were some off the field things, maybe some comments behind the scenes from Nick Saban that, or, somebody in the Alabama program potentially, or who knows what it is. That's purely speculation, but he went undrafted, not because he's not really, really good as an offensive lineman. I think he's probably going to make a 53-man roster. So how do we fill those gaps? We bring in the center from Indiana, Zach Carpenter. who is a big dude, bigger than Matt Lee. A lot of experience playing college football, was a Michigan recruit, was honorable mention all Big Ten last year at Indiana. So I feel like people are kind of assuming he's going to be a major step backwards from Matt Lee. And I don't think that's necessarily fair. Matt Lee was really good, but Zach Carpenter, in his own way, has the potential to be a very good player, especially when he's got Inez Cooper and, whoever ends up starting at left guard next to him.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the strength of our line is definitely going to be on the outside moving in. And you're right. Zach Carpenter will be it'll be interesting to see how he steps up and replaces Matt Lee, who is irreplaceable. Very interesting to also see, what's going on with what's his face, the other 5-star recruit, Samson Okinola. Yeah. What are your feelings? I mean, highly touted recruit. That was a big win for Mario, but we haven't seen him make an impact yet. Are you thinking that this is his year to finally step up?
Maybe. I mean, he was hurt last year. I think going into training camp, he was either the first or second guy who was probably going to have been coming off the bench. But he got hurt early in the season. And, it's pretty crazy that none of the starters on the offensive line missed significant time last year. That's impressive. And that's not something that you can bank on. Obviously, at any position, you always got to kind of have the depth to assume there's injuries. So I think Miami has really good depth at the offensive line across the board, honestly. And this is not like these other positions where we're saying, maybe we don't have the guy, but we have a bunch of replacements. The offensive line has elite talent, from Francis to Inez Cooper to Jalen Rivers, arguably even some more guys beyond that. But those three especially are really elite college offensive linemen. And then we have a ton of depth to where if one of them ends up coming out and has to be replaced, yes, there's a step back when you go from elite to very good. But I feel like we have another 5 dudes, like almost an entire second line, who could step up and would be better than the dudes we were starting a few seasons ago.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, left guard, as long as it ends up not being Lou Cristobal, we'll be in good shape. Whether that ends up being Pancake or whether it's Matt McCoy, I feel like Matt McCoy is going to end up starting, and Pancake's going to be the 6th guy. Although I would prefer to see Pancake be the left guard and Matt McCoy keeps his role that he had last year as kind of the 6th guy and the guy that comes in as the jumbo tight end for short yardage packages, because he was a high school tight end. He can do that. But we also have other dudes who can fill that role. We have that absolute monster they picked up from JUCO, the dude who's like 6'9".
Mark. What is it?
Yeah, Markel Bell. Yeah. That guy's a monster. Tommy Kinsler is a monster. We've got Ryan Rodriguez has really been coming along as like the backup center, or even as a guard. People have said he's had a really good camp. He's like a 4th-year guy now, or they say redshirt sophomore. Maybe he's only a 3rd-year guy, but he's been here for a while. He's still here, and he could end up being the center next year.
Well, and you're overlooking Antonio Tripp Jr. I mean, that guy was a 4-star recruit, obviously redshirted last year. But I mean, like, we got dudes. And I think that's the first time in a long time I can say that the Miami offensive line had dudes. Because, like, when I was working with the team, we had a couple dudes, but like the whole unit wasn't dudes.
Yeah. Our whole second line is dudes.
Yeah.
Like, we could line up Markel Bell, could go Markel Bell, Tommy Kinsler, Ryan Rodriguez,
who else? I mean, a pancake, depending on if he's first line or
Yeah,
second
whoever
line.
starts, and then the freshmen from this class, like Plaz is huge. Juan Manaya, his nickname's Door because he is the size of a door. He went to Paramus High School, the
Oh yeah,
hometown of our boy Rip. And Frankie Tanalau from last year's class was also a monster, kind of a developmental piece. But there's just guys all over at that position, and that's something we just haven't had in previous years.
oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, which is exciting.
Yeah. I feel great about the offensive line.
Now let's just hope that we can keep them healthy, which has always been a concern. And one concern I've always had with Miami is like we've never been able to keep our dudes healthy.
Yeah. So knock on wood, of course, but we got 4 days left at this point before the season starts. And as far as we know, there haven't been any catastrophic offseason injuries. I know a few days ago there was some rumblings about there being some sort of injury that hasn't been disclosed yet, and it still hasn't been disclosed yet. So I don't know. Who knows? Miami keeps things close to the vest. We could hear the morning of one of our expected starters is out. Who knows? But pretty solid offseason, no major injuries. Everyone's healthy, rolling into game week. Just got to continue that on out. And unlike other years, we actually have the depth at most positions to back it up. If we lose one of our starters at cornerback, linebacker, or safety, that's not as great. But everywhere else, I feel pretty good about.
Yeah. Well, Freed, I know we're pushing up against the time, but it sounds like we've done a pretty comprehensive offensive review.
Yeah.
It sounds like we need one more session where we can squish together both the defense and our favorite special teams.
Special teams might get their own session. We'll see. We'll see what
happens. Freed, you're talking to the wrong guy for special teams. For special teams, I think you need to call in the incomparable former University of Miami special teams coordinator, unofficially, Coach.
Oh yeah, Coach.
Right.
Coach is getting busy. He's ready for his trying to prep for his own season. So I don't think Coach is coming on this week, but we can get somebody who once hit a 50-yard field goal in Al Golden's face to maybe help with that. We'll see.
In a hurricane, in the wind, with the back of his foot.
Lefty.
Blindfolded.
All right, everybody. Well, I think it's time to call it a wrap for today. I'm going to close out of the spaces here. We'll cut the stream in a second, but thank you all for joining us. This has been Freed and Jizz coming at you with some Booch Ball off-season talk. Man, Jizz, you got to sign off for us?
Stay cultured.
That's